Hi, welcome to Choosing Recovery. I'm Tricia Gibson, licensed professional counselor, licensed independent chemical dependency counselor. Choosing Recovery is a show that we do monthly here, and we just give information about the multidimensional issues surrounding addiction in individual lives and families and in individuals. So we want to welcome everyone. I also want to quickly highlight that September is National Recovery Month. And this year, nationally, we want to just show that recovery is possible, and we want to provide information to help individuals strengthen their health and also strengthen families and the community. Today I have Hilary Johnson with me. She is actually a recovering substance user, and she is here to share her story of addiction and recovery. So welcome, Hilary. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name's Hilary. I'm a recovering addict. I've been using since I was 15 years old, and I just have been in and out of rehabs and detoxes.
Okay. So a lot of people ask me as a professional, why do people use drugs? What would you say? What's been your experience? Why did you start?
I started using because I wanted to fit in, because I didn't feel good about myself, because the drugs took that away, and I thought they took that away. And instead of really taking it away, it was really just making it worse.
Okay. What was your drug of choice?
My drug of choice is heroin and cocaine, nerve pills. I've used basically everything there is, I think you could use, but those were my drugs of choice.
Okay. What's that lifestyle like? How can we get people in the community to see it from your perspective?
It is horrible. It is chaotic, miserable. I can sit here and tell you that I didn't want to use, but I kept doing it because I didn't know how to live any other way. I couldn't stop. I didn't want to be sick, but I wanted to be able to do things, and I couldn't do that without my drugs, but I knew that it was killing me at the same time. It's a miserable cycle.
Mm-hmm. You said it was killing you at times. I know you've mentioned to me off camera that you had overdosed before. What was that like? What happened?
I've actually overdosed a few times. The first time I overdosed was in 2012, and I had been taking a lot of Xanaxes, and I also was on heroin. And I remember being sick and waiting for my drugs, and that's the last thing I remember. And then I recall being at the hospital and my sister rubbing my head and telling me it was going to be okay. I now know that that never really happened, that I was back there by myself. They actually had my family come because they didn't think I was going to make it. Mm-hmm. I was on a ventilator. When I woke up, I felt the machines breathing for me, and I still didn't realize that I had overdosed. And I woke up with double pneumonia in both my lungs. They didn't know if I was going to be able to walk. They didn't know how my brain function was going to be. But I was okay. I came out, my chest was sore. I had a little hard time walking for a little while, but I would love to sit here and say that that stopped me, that I stopped using then, and that was the end of my story, because that was enough. But it wasn't. I started using again within a week of getting out of the hospital.
What led up to that decision to go back to using after that experience?
Just because the drugs were taken out of my system didn't mean that I was mentally well. Mm-hmm. And my addiction told me that I was just going to go take some Percocets. It would make me feel better. It would take my aches away, and it would be okay. I didn't have to go back to the drugs I was doing. I mean, but that's not the truth.
So kind of minimized it and rationalized it to be okay.
Yes. I've done that several times throughout my years with several different drugs.
You mentioned your sister. It was actually Amanda Brumfield that we had on the show last month, and she really did a good job of explaining the family side of addiction and how that impacts families. So I'm so happy that you're here today to show what it's like for individuals. You mentioned mentally. What goes on mentally when you're making the decisions to use, or how does the addiction take over? What's your thought processes?
Well, at the very beginning, when I first started drinking and smoking weed, a lot of people think that's harmless. You're young, that's what everybody's doing. And I did it because I wanted to fit in. I thought I had something to prove, and I did those things, and they made me feel good. So I soon started using cocaine after that, and that took away all my insecurities, and I felt better, and I had no idea what that was going to lead into. So as my addiction progressed, my well-being also decreased. Like, I continued to think worse of myself. My self-esteem was plummeting, and then I felt like I needed those drugs to even function or think good of myself.
Are you thinking, minute to minute about drugs when you're in that?
Yes, when you are caught up in addiction, there is hardly anything on your mind but drugs. How you're going to get your next fix, or if you're going to have enough for tomorrow, or if you're going to be able to make it to a family function because you might be too sick to go. It's just chaotic. Like, I love my family more than anything, and I was hurting them, and I knew I was hurting them. I didn't want to, but I knew I was. So thankfully, I'm lucky enough to have a family that was there for me, even if they had to love me from a distance. My family have called the police on me. They've had me arrested. They've been through all kinds of things with me. I can't sit here and say I know what they've been through because I'm not on that side, but they've tried to go through it with me as much as they can, and addiction's a family disease, if you want it to be or not.
It absolutely is. I mean, it's a major part of our communities and our families. So I know Amanda talked last month about the family side of it. Is there anything that you can tell families watching today? How can they help their loved one who is addicted? What should they do? What shouldn't they do?
My best advice I can give you is that you don't want to hand out cash. We come up with all kinds of stories. We've learned to be very manipulative and selfish over our addiction, and we will make up stories and make you feel bad and play on your emotions. That's what addiction does. So giving out cash is a really bad idea. Just go get what they need yourself. Constant love, even if you do have to do it from a distance. We as addicts already feel like we've done so much wrong and nobody loves us, and that we're just doomed to this life, that we have to have other people love us sometimes when we don't love ourselves.
You need that support.
Yes.
For sure.
And the legal system's not always a bad thing. It's not always fair, but sometimes that gives you time to have consequences to your actions, and that's okay too, for somebody to have consequences to their actions.
Sure.
Because your life has got to become worse than what you're living for you to change it.
What did it take for you to change it?
I'd been living like this for a very long time, in and out of rehabs, in and out of detoxes. I have 3 children. I was miserable, and I got to the point where my last time I overdosed, I was taken to the hospital just in time. I guess I could say they gave me 6 shots of Narcan before I woke up. And I felt like my life was just breathed back in through my nostrils, and I believe that God did that. The doctors told me I was dead, I was pushing 90 pounds, if that, and I got up, took my IVs out, and I left as soon as I woke up. And I was on that cycle again, and I knew I was going to kill myself. Like, I'm not going to have 100 lives. And my use only got worse after that. I was shooting heroin and cocaine and using nerve pills every day. And I can remember just being miserable and wanting to be there for my kids, but I couldn't. And watching my family suffer and my friends suffer from just watching me. And I actually got into some trouble. I picked up a couple charges, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this. And I went to detox. I didn't want to go to jail, withdrawing. And while I was in detox, I tried to come home my first day, like I do everywhere I go. And because my addiction was too strong, it told me, like, you don't want to do this, you can go home and kick this yourself. But I know that's not true. And of course, by this time, my parents would not come pick me up. And I ended up staying. I got out a couple days later, and I decided I was going to do this. And a lot of things were thrown my way at first, and it was hard. And there was a lot of times I had to call people in the middle of the night. I was living with my parents at the time. I woke my dad up a couple times because there was just stuff that I just didn't know how to handle. I hadn't handled and dealt with my own emotions in such a very long time that sadness or any little thing like that could trigger me, and I had to recognize that.
Sure.
So
would you say that you use substances to try to self-medicate the self-esteem, the sadness, the anxiety?
I did. I use drugs for any excuse I could have drugs for. After a while, those things only get worse. Your anxiety only gets worse. Your self-esteem only gets worse. You do things that you become ashamed of, and when those things come up, you use to forget about those things because you don't want to deal with them.
Right. So I think from a community standpoint, it's hard for people to understand how you can go from how you are now, healthy and in a good state of mind and in recovery, to that person that uses. It's such a huge difference.
It is. When I was in the middle of my addiction, I can literally remember sitting on the floor, just crying, wishing I could be the person that I am right now. I wish I could find her again because she seems so far away, and I didn't know how I was going to get there. And I just remember praying and praying, like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I just want the old Hilary back, but she seems so far away, and I don't know who I am anymore. But now I can sit here and say that I don't know who that person is anymore.
Okay. So you've kind of came to the other side of that?
Yeah.
So we're here talking with Hilary Johnson about her individual struggle with addiction and her current health and recovery. I'm Trisha Gibson. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Choosing Recovery. I'm Trisha Gibson here talking with Hilary Johnson. Right before the break, we was talking about, when you were in your addiction, you didn't know who you were, or how you were going to get back to who you used to be. And now it's like you can't relate to who you used to be as a drug user. How does a person get into recovery? What's helped?
Now, the biggest tools that I have is a Celebrate Recovery program at Gallia Strong Tower, which is at Benton Baptist Church. It's a 12-step program, but we name our higher power as Jesus. That's what makes it different from the other 12-step programs. I go to those meetings faithfully. They help me. It's a good group of people. I also go to counseling at Field of Hope, at the rehab they just opened up across the street. church is a big thing. I wouldn't be able to be where I'm at without God, and I can't handle things on my own, and I never will be able to, even sober. And I'm always gonna need that in my life to continue where I'm at, and that's a big thing, is counseling, surrounding yourself with people that want to help.
Wonderful. And I know I've heard a lot of people I've worked with in recovery say, when I stopped using and I got into recovery, all those emotions that I hadn't dealt with, all of those responsibilities that I haven't dealt with, and the problems, they're still there, and now how I'm so overwhelmed, how do I deal with that? So, and that's really difficult in early recovery. What would you say to those people? How can they fight through that?
It is hard. It's okay to call for help. It's okay to have those emotions. It's okay to be overwhelmed. Call somebody to help you. My example with my 3 children, my 2 older children, I didn't take a lot of care of, and now I have a 2-year-old, and coming home to 3 children is a lot. And sometimes I had to call and say, I need help. I promise that there's people that want to see you sober, and there's people that are willing to help you. It's okay to reach out and say, I'm not okay.
Who would you reach out to? Who could people reach out to?
I would reach out to my family. I know that not everybody has family to reach out to, and a lot of times we burn bridges in our addiction. And you can also reach out to friends. I reach out to my counselor all the time, people like that.
And I know 12-step programs like AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery have sponsors.
Yes.
So it's a peer that's also been in recovery for a period of time, that usually you can get their phone number, text them, call them for support too.
Yes.
Wonderful. So a couple questions unrelated to you personally, but I wanted your thoughts as you've been in that situation. Do you think that there's more men that struggle with addiction, or more women?
I think that it's both. I don't think that there's really more than the other. I can't sit here and tell you the exact statistics because I don't know, but as of me being out there using, I see men and women both.
Okay. And I've made it clear that part of my overall goal for this show is to reduce the stigma around addiction and educate people in the community on what it's like, what the problems are, and how we can come together to help. What would you most want people in the community to know about addiction?
I would like them to know that you don't have to agree with actions, but it's not okay to just want to throw us off the map and say there's no use, there's no help for them, that it's just a moral failing that we have, and we choose to do those drugs every time. It might be a choice at first, but after a while that addiction takes over, and it really is going to take a community to band together and need to help everybody.
So from my experience and what you've said today, people start using because of peer pressure, because of physical pain, or psychological, emotional pain, depression, anxiety, trauma, to cover up those negative emotions. And, you know, people in the community need to view people in addiction as human beings.
Yes. That
need help. They might not want help, and you have to just kind of be patient with them and love them through that.
You do. At one of my rehab stays, I'll never forget, one of our leaders told us, because once we'd been in there for a while, we got to feeling better. You get people that come in that are still sick and in their addiction, and they're still stealing and cussing and picking fights, and they told us to imagine them with a bandage on their head, just like you would a cancer patient, that they're sick, and you have to be patient with them.
So you mentioned too, at first it might have started out as a choice, but then the addiction takes over. So there are actual physical elements to addiction and how it affects your brain and works in the brain.
Yes.
And on your mental processes and your thought processes. Like you said, you thought about it every day, most of the time. So
Yes.
it really does take over.
Yes.
I've heard a lot too in the community that, like parents can't understand how other parents could use substances and not take care of their kids or be there for their kids, or that they love the drugs more than their kids. What would you say in response to that?
All I can say is I have 3 kids of my own. I love them more than anything. But that didn't stop me from using that drug. I didn't mean that. I know it's hard to understand if I sit here and say that they're more important, but drugs will take over you to the point that nothing is important but that drug.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's not that you stopped loving your kids.
No, not at all.
It's that you had a physical need and your mental state was so overwhelmed with the need to fulfill that you used drugs.
Yes, that I did. I pushed my children to the side and I went chasing those drugs. And my addiction also told me that you're such a bad parent, those kids are better off without you.
Okay.
And then that's really what I believed. I know now that that is absolutely not the truth. And I'm there for my children now, and I'm a good mother. But we are, with my children too, we are also currently going through counseling because even my children are having to go through things that maybe children wouldn't that didn't have an addicted parent.
Sure. It's a family disease,
Yes.
like you mentioned. That's great that you have them in counseling to get some help and guidance to work through that too. I know we've talked about stigma. What's it been like for you as a person in recovery?
There is a big stigma around addiction. I actually went to work one time and been crying because I had just went to a funeral where I had a friend OD, and I came to work with my eyes puffy, and I had waited on a table that was not happy. They knew of me from my past, and they assumed I was high because my eyes were puffy and I wasn't smiling, and so that's automatically, they thought, because of my past, that I wasn't okay. I've also, when I've been at the hospital, I've been treated very differently because I was an addict.
Okay.
And that's not always easy. That doesn't help the situation.
Do you think that kind of judgment or attitude from people has been a barrier maybe to you or others to going to the doctor, to going to counseling?
I do think that. I really believe if everybody has such a problem with addiction and what it's causing the community and nothing else is working, why not give them the benefit of the doubt and just love them, not judge them.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to people in the community? How can they get involved? How can they help?
I would just get involved with your local churches, your local AA stuff. We have the Gallia County Coalition of Prevention and Retention, Recovery. Yeah. And that's a great thing. They're trying to get everybody involved in doing different things. Even things as simple as getting involved in the Crime Watch stuff.
Okay.
I mean, things like that, just getting involved and learning who's out there doing what and what you can do.
Yeah, because like you said, sometimes law enforcement isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
You know,
Right.
sometimes those consequences do help people, like,
Yes.
okay, I need to make a change.
Right.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to share? What do you think might help somebody today?
Well, all I can say today is I can sit here and say that I am self-sufficient and that I am a good worker and I'm beautiful and I've got good self-esteem, and recovery's taught me that. I grow closer to God every day, and that's where recovery's at. Is there.
So your spiritual beliefs has been a big part of your recovery?
It is.
Yeah.
Definitely, 100%.
So I'm so glad that you came on today. I really want to show people that recovery is possible. It's not something that we just talk about. It happens every day. And I just want to encourage people in the community to educate yourselves on addiction and how it is for people that are struggling with addiction, and how it impacts families and the communities at large. And just get involved however you can. Thank you.